Get your Let's All Laugh at an Industry t-shirts from our merch store at zftba.com. Something tells me they're going to become relevant pretty soon. Let's all laugh at an industry that never learns anything TEE. There's a rather disturbing trend with AAA game studios lately. Make one bad game, get shut down. Take too long to make a good game, get shut down. Make and release several good games that win universal acclaim and success, get shut down. Ask not to be shut down, begin an equitable conversation between levels of management on the most mutually beneficial way forward, then get shut down. A reasonable person might think the industry's a bit fucked. Late-stage capitalism has slid into it all the way up to the balls, and maybe it's about time we started becoming very unreasonable people. But I'm just one reasonable person, Yahtzee, I hear you cry. What the hell am I supposed to do about it? Urinate on the front step of the Warner Brothers head office? Why don't you join me in my chamber of horrors for another episode of for this debut episode of a completely new occasional series in Fully Ramblomatic on the most notorious moments in gaming history. And let me tell you a little story about something one person was able to do without having to urinate on anything that we know of. In the late 90s and early 2000s, corporations were being shit and everything was getting worse. So usual stuff, really. Video games, while still a young, dynamic industry, was old enough to be attracting a second generation of workers who'd played video games as kids and were all like, man, I love blowing the faces off hell imps in Doom. I'd love it if it was my job to make their faces blow off. That'd be much healthier than my other plan to initiate a school shooting massacre. Video games were exciting. The industry had been birthed from scratch by a veritable pantheon of passionate, visionary, big-name creators, competing to show the most dedication to the craft. And being so driven, and not physically old enough that overworking themselves would leave them bedridden with their spines bent at right angles, there was a certain cachet attached to working hard. They'd brag of doing 12-hour shifts and only sleeping 4 hours because they were kept awake thinking of all the red pixels they were going to put on the Hell Imp's death sprite in the morning. And the sharks of corporatism were circling, attracted by two of their favourite smells, exploitable people, and absolute distended rectum loads of cash to be made. Fast forward to 2004, and video game professional Erin Hoffman is concerned about her fiancé, Leander Hasty, who was coming home from his job at Electronic Arts every night and melting into an oleaginous slurry on the floor. And after a while, Erin was all like, hang on, I'm pretty sure people aren't supposed to melt into oleaginous slurries. I think things might be a bit fucked. So she took to LiveJournal to anonymously write what would become known as the EA Spouse blog post. You'll be astonished to learn that her post is to this day still up on livejournal.com. Right after you get over your initial astonishment that LiveJournal is still up on livejournal.com, and you can read for yourself as Erin whistleblows just how fucked labour practices had gotten at EA. She recounts that Leander and employees like him were being forced to work 12-hour shifts 7 days a week, that the company had loaded everyone's testicles into a vice and was taking the phrase crunch time just a little too literally, and no one was getting paid overtime. When pressed, the company kept bringing up that overtime law specifically exempts computer professionals in California. I've no idea why. Maybe there's some archaic notion that it doesn't count as work if you get to sit on your bum pressing buttons all day. It really was mindless corporate evil beyond all rational sense. The fucking janitor could have pointed out that a melted oleaginous slurry wasn't going to be able to code terribly efficiently, on top of being a pain in the arse to get out of the carpet. But no, the rockstar video game bros that built the industry out of their garages had foregone rest and mental health to pursue their passion, and so that was now the expectation. If you couldn't hack it, making video games was ostensibly a dream job. They could always reap another harvest of starry-eyed STEM grads and wring the life out of them instead. Standard practice was to dazzle new employees with perks, free food, free ice cream, in-house swimming pools and spas that no one would actually have the time to bloody use. And it was one of these that had been the last straw for Erin, according to an interview in the LA Times. In lieu of providing fair pay or days off, EA had elected to boost morale by paying to send apology bouquets to every employee's wife. And that incidentally was the one detail that made me want to do this video, because until that I wasn't sure this story had a funny side. So what good did one single voice do? Well, Erin's story spread like wildfire. Supportive messages and similar stories came in from all over the industry. All it took to make the initial crack was one angry woman shining a light on the shit everyone had come to accept, and soon the whole creme brulee came apart. 3 class action lawsuits ended with Hasty and his colleagues receiving a $15 million settlement, and the industry at large was forced to reclassify its employees to make them eligible for overtime, much like when the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes, except against his will, held down and his heart forcibly inflated with a bicycle pump. Erin herself went on to found GameWatch.org, an independent watchdog organisation that to this day works tirelessly— oh, actually, it shut down in 2012. Well, the point is, the corporate industry learned its lesson and was never evil again. Oh, that's not true either. Seems like these days the tech industry doesn't work you to death, it just fires you before it's even had the chance. So ultimately things never stopped being fucked. I did say it was tough to find a funny side. Let's just giggle at the bouquet thing again. Christ, in terms of soulless machines putting up facades of humanity, that's right up there with the prototype rubber skin Terminators Skynet stopped using on day 2. We live in troubling times here in 2025 as someone invested in both the video game industry and the continued existence of human civilization, but I find it a comfort to read stories like these in which we learn that things have always been fucked, but somehow humanity muddles through. America's had terrible demented presidents before. Trump is an evolved form of Reagan, with the position on Russia reversed and with all those drugs he kept telling us to say no to stuffed up his fucking nose. I suppose the lesson worth taking is to keep in mind that time is always moving forward, that even the most seemingly indelible of horrors must change eventually, and I leave you on one last point to illustrate that. If you go to Erin Hoffman's live journal, you'll find a follow-up post to the EA spouse story in which Erin muses on the impact she has had with the following sentiment. Truly the power of the internet is astounding. We live in a positive age when so much information can be shared so easily and quickly. And my god, what an innocent time. Considering the last 20 years of impact the internet has had, that statement will be remembered by historians alongside Neville Chamberlain in 1938, waving his piece of paper and saying what a reasonable and level-headed fella that Hitler guy turned out to be.